doing? Oh, hey, Sharon, it is so good to see you.
It's great to see you, Stacy.
So we sprung forward, and now it is time to record a new episode of Two Salty Women and a Dash of Salt. So, are you ready to do this?
I'm ready.
Oh,
It's a lot more fun season two.
it is. It is. I'm having more fun myself. So, we welcome to A Dash of Salt. We are two salty women. I am Stacy McCracken, your co-host, a Midwestern girl turned Austinite. South by Southwest is going on in Austin right now, so things are a little crazy here. But hopefully, if you haven't visited us before, you can. And yeah,
Yeah, and
welcome.
Sharon Maui, your salty companion, a native Texan with a knack for baking up big dreams.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm super excited to have everyone here today. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you so much for finding us on your podcast playlist. If you have listened to us before, you know that salty does not mean we are angry or upset about anything, but we are just trying to spice up your week and spice up your day just a little bit with some fun, some new ideas for work, and what it's like to be empty nesters and to
That's right.
continue to strive to move forward, right, Sharon?
That's right. Yeah. So, hopefully you'll sit back or drive carefully wherever you might be listening to us. Relax and get ready for this week's topic, which, Stacy, I think this week we're going to talk about all things AI.
We are. I'm super excited. So we are just gonna put our toe in the pond of AI this week. But there's so much going on that it's impossible to, unless we do what Lex Friedman did, which is he did a really great in-depth podcast on AI, but it was 5 hours long. And so we are
Yeah.
not going 5 hours. We are sticking our toe in and, shooting for about 20 minutes today.
That's awesome. Well, before we do that, we're going to kick off with your weekly spark for the week. Since it is Women's History Month, I thought I'd take a moment to celebrate some female trailblazers. Just like us, we're trying to blaze a trail out there. But right now, there's two people I kind of admire that I'd like to give a shout out. One right now is Reese Witherspoon. I love the fact that as she was starting to look ahead in her acting career, she wanted, she took the initiative and founded Hello Sunshine, which is dedicated to amplifying female-driven stories, and she's found a ton of success with that because, as she was right all along, people want to, see stories like that. They want to go to movies, they want to read books that are have the main character be females. So the second person that I have admired in the last year that I got introduced last summer during the Olympics was Alona Maher, if I say her last name correctly. Of course, women's sports is a super hot topic these days. In the last 12 months, gaining popularity, people are really going out and actively supporting them. But Alana is an Olympic bronze medalist. She promotes body positivity, and she really took the initiative. She's trying to, basically support herself because um, the pay that she gets from being a professional rugby player as a woman is, very small. So she went on social media, and through her acclaim in the last year, she, on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She now has a lot of great sponsorships with Coppertone and Adidas. So
I saw
I
that
think
today
that
that
is,
she is our new Coppertone girl, Sharon.
I know that's like from our day, Coppertone, girls out
Absolutely.
there. So I was super excited to see that still around, and she's a great representation for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I saw that, yeah, it popped up on my Instagram feed just before we got on today that she was our new Coppertone girl. And she still had the old image that you and I remember of the little girl with pigtails and the dog pulling down her bathing suit. And so I was super excited to see that for her. And I agree with you. She is doing so much to promote that body positivity for young women because that is just something honestly that I didn't grow up with.
Mm.
And I'm sure you're not that much younger than me. You're a little bit younger than me. I'm not sure that you grew up with it either. But so I love those two. I have a couple others that come to mind as you were talking. So Brooke Shields is doing a lot right now to promote just women as they age, right? And that positive that they aren't finished yet, right? And she just released a new book that Brooke Shields isn't allowed to get old, and just talking about the fact that it's really hard for people to imagine, right? Her aging and, but her still having a voice and something to say and something to contribute. And I think that's something that she has in common with Reese, right? That they're trying to promote positive stories for women and really help women age more gracefully and be accepted. And because it's Women's History Month, I actually I have a deck of cards called Fierce Women,
Okay.
and it is a deck built of all of these cool women throughout history. And so I dug through and I found one that I thought was perfect for what we are talking about today with respect to AI. And this is someone that many people might not have heard of, but her name is Ada Lovelace. Have you heard of Ada Lovelace?
I'm not.
Okay, so let me just tell you about her. She is a mathematician. She is a metaphysician, and she was the founder of scientific computing. And she lived from 1815 to 1852. And she had one of the first ideas that machines could be used for more than just calculation. And so she was considered kind of the first modern day computer programmer.
Awesome. That's exciting. Definitely
Isn't
on topic for the day.
right? Isn't that fun?
Yeah. Yeah. So talking about topic of the day, Stacy, what do you have for us about dipping our toe into the AI world?
So I thought that it would be fun today for us to talk about artificial intelligence, which we will refer to for the rest of the show as AI, right? Because artificial intelligence is a mouthful and it means a lot of things. And so, generally we're going to talk about things that individuals might be familiar with, like Chat GPT or, these generative AI things where you're talking to your computer with sentences and it's giving you information in response that is different from just a plain old Google search, right? Where you type a keyword in and it's giving you articles or links to things that are like, well, maybe this is what you're looking for. And so I want to talk about AI. And, I thought we might just start with talking about maybe our journeys. Because, Sharon, I know that you use AI some. And so I want to hear about that. My journey started, I saw articles starting to come out about artificial intelligence and AI. And as you know, and as many of our listeners probably remember, I was working on my doctorate in school at the time as well. So I was working on a doctorate of technology. And so I had this class on strategy and technology, and I had to pick a project. So I picked a project on AI simply because I didn't know anything about it. And I knew it would force me to spend some time and practice and get to know it and really start to learn what it was all about. So that was my first kind of foray. And from then, I just really started integrating and playing with Chat GPT and Perplexity AI, and then some other research things as well. Um, and since then, it's just amazing to me how many, even everyday things that I use now have an AI component added in or an AI element that's available. And so, that's kind of how my journey started. And now I can't imagine I probably use some form of AI every single day. Um, but yeah, so Sharon, what's your journey? What does that look like?
I would say my first foray into AI, I was introduced to beautiful AI for presentations uh, through one of the professors at the university where I work. And I absolutely loved it. I love that, if I wanted to move from 3 boxes to 4 boxes on a, you know, presentation slide, well, it would easily adapt and make my presentation simple. Whereas, PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint was a little bit more difficult and time consuming to do that. Now, I have tried recently, PowerPoint is incorporating a little bit of that in there, but not quite at the speed and agility that I think beautiful AI does. But of course, just like you, in the last year, I've used ChatGPT and Pilot, mostly for writing skills. Writing is not my forte. I have a larger team now in the last year, and being able to modify my bullet list style writing to match the personality and attributes of my team member, I have utilized a ChatGPT and those tools to help me um, speak a similar language to my employees.
I love that. I love that. That's a great, I think that's a great kind of lead into sort of some everyday uses, right? I think that possibly folks are like, AI isn't for me, or, I'm not working, or I don't manage a team, or things like that. And, I'm wondering, if maybe it'd be helpful to just talk about some ways, some everyday uses for AI, because I find it helpful at work, but I also find it helpful for things that have nothing to do with work. And so I would love to spend a little bit of time talking about that. I use it to brainstorm. I work at home and I work, you know, as a solopreneur most of the time. And so, sometimes I'll find that I just am trying to brainstorm ideas, and I find it makes a great partner to say, hey, think about the economy, think about what's happening with jobs, think about, you know, these specific companies, and where are the gaps, what am I not thinking about when I'm thinking about ways that I can help serve them better, right? And it's a great brainstorming partner. It's also great to summarize long articles. and
Yes.
so and so if I come across a 20-page article that I just don't have time for, it can give you the summary of it. I see you smiling. Have you used it for that too? It is awesome.
Yes, well, I use it primarily for work. And I learned at a recent conference from some of my competitors that you're using different tools to take an article that maybe a faculty member has written that's very technical and long, as you might say, which is great for journal articles, but not so great maybe to a prospective student. So there's tools out there to summarize those articles quickly and succinctly to, our prospective student in a way that might appeal to them more so than the deep research our faculty have been doing. So I love that. And then I certainly love, when you go to Google now, and you type in a question, well, it gives you a summary of all the websites, so I don't have to click through 3 or 4 or 5 websites to get my answer. I just either go to the one site it recommended, or I see the sources that a Google has summarized for me, and then it's a great time saver, I found.
Right? It is. I love that. When we did our podcast on travel, I think I talked a little bit about using AI for planning trips. And I love it for that because, it can save hours and hours of time just by setting its expertise, right? Saying you are an expert travel planner and I want to go to this place I've never been before, and here are the activities I love to do. Tell me 3 or 4 things I should do while I'm there. And it is great for that. And so even if you're just trying to dip your toe in the water and have a little bit of fun, you can do that and use it, not just for work, but also for fun, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And so I've used Beautiful AI as well, and I've noticed that Canva, which is another graphic design tool, has started to integrate AI tools. I did a quick search probably day before yesterday, and it listed 20 tools, right, that you could use
Yes.
how to help you do a podcast. And, if anybody's wondering if we're using AI to generate our podcast, no, this is us. This is all Sharon and I. And so we have not played with AI yet for doing our podcast or anything like that. Um, but there's tons for writing, there's tons for research, there's tons for productivity. I love that ChatGPT has a new feature called Project, which means you can basically take an idea or build a folder, and then you can add to it and build new ideas within that folder so you can have one theme. So I think that's a new feature that I started playing with just last week that I'm loving right now. Any other ways you like to use this, Sharon?
I would say for now, those are the primary reasons. I'm a little frugal, let's say. So a lot of the new, I wanted to use a tool this week. I was about to go get my haircut and I thought, I was kind of wanting a new hairdo. And there's AI tools out there that you can, picture the style on your face. But I could not find one that would do that quickly for me for free. But I'm out there exploring every day to find new tools.
I love that. And what's curious to me, this leads us into kind of the next topic that I want to talk about is, I read uh, kind of an article that made me sad that sort of prompted the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, which HBR published an article just a couple of weeks ago about ageism and artificial intelligence and AI. And it was a study that was done that looked not just at the United States, but at some very large European countries, and looking at the fact that employers, if they are looking to hire people and kind of across these different age ranges, that if they know that AI is going to be involved in that job, that very few are willing to look at somebody over the age of 55. They just automatically presume that that is not going to be a good fit where AI is involved. And I mean, the percentages I'm talking about are things like, let me look at my list real quick just so I get it right. I don't want to misquote. But, they're saying 90% would look at somebody under the age of 35, whereas only maybe 30% would look at somebody over the age of 55, which is just sad, right? Because it means there's this assumption there that if you're older, you're not interested or you're not teachable or um I don't know. And so that really struck me that more and more AI things are going to be included in jobs and working alongside people, and people are working longer. And this bias of, well, if you're of a certain age, you're not going to be interested in it just seems, I don't know, seems to me like a gap. What do you think?
I agree because it's difficult. I mean, I'm sure there's stats out there that they use in surveying companies that come up with this age restriction, if you will. But I found in my own department, we have quite a broad range of ages in my own department. I might be towards the older end of that spectrum, but I would say I'm one of the forefront in our department, leading us through utilizing some of these tools out there and how can we do our job use these tools to market more effectively and more efficiently, right? Whereas maybe some other people, so I don't think an age is a determination um, that it's a factor of using AI tools or not. I think it's a willingness to be more of a first adopter of something than later in the new product stage.
Absolutely. I love that. I think you and I are both Gen Xers, right? So are you considered a Gen Xer?
To be
You
honest,
don't
I
know?
can never keep track. I
Okay, I
should
think
write
you
it
are.
down somewhere. Yeah.
I think you are. And so, I grew up where, I was the one who had to learn how to program the VCR, and I was the one who learned how to do all of these different things because technology was always changing,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so, I feel like I'm pretty adaptable and pretty quick because I'm just kind of used to it, right? And I think that that speaks to you as well, right? You're like, oh, it's just a new thing I have to go figure out now. And
Exactly. Yeah. Can
I
still think
wonder how
about
I can
when.
get, how, I wonder how it can make me more efficient is probably the question you're asking yourself.
Exactly. Moving to, well, we might start aging ourselves really big, but yes, the new technology would come out at every stage, whether going from high school to college to
Right.
professional life. There's new technologies and how we did things. And so, yeah, you had to learn it or get left behind.
You mentioned that about having the right mindset and this willingness to engage. And, part of my dissertation research was around mindset and having this growth mindset related to artificial intelligence. And, I had a strong sample that was a good age distribution as well as gender distribution. And age and gender didn't matter when it came to interest.
Yeah.
Right. And so it wasn't that the younger folks were more interested or men were more interested. There was no difference whatsoever in age and gender and all of that. But there was something that came out, which was the people who were interested and who had been playing with it and exploring, their innovative thinking scores were much, much higher than
Hmm.
people who were afraid. And I'm sure that doesn't surprise you a ton, but I'm just wondering, what do you think is so intimidating for some people about AI or these new tools and what do you think we could do to shift it?
Well, I think there's two major things. One is, people's aversion to fail, their ability and willingness to risk failing, right? So it's a new technology. Are we willing to try it? I've always been willing to fail in that regards and
Are
try.
good.
So I think that's one.
So, I think one thing that I've observed people are afraid about is, well, I've heard some folks talk about how it's going to cause people not to think critically anymore. Like you're
Mhm.
going to lose your ability to for critical thinking. And then I've heard some folks talk about you that it almost is going to invade their privacy or there's too many bad things that can happen because of AI. And 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 I always kind of press on that a little bit. I'm like, what bad things? Because I remember hearing those things when the internet came about, right?
Yeah,
And yes, there are dark corners of the internet that nobody should go to, and bad things absolutely happen on the internet. Um, but like I get really excited when I think about the power of AI and what it can do by pulling together research that's happening all over the world to come up with, better studies that should happen next so that we can use our research money more efficiently. We can solve problems more quickly. Those really hard, hard problems that the world
right.
has. Like I'm encouraged by that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
but
that was my second point is that people are afraid of what data is out there. So as you're asking questions and providing whatever AI tool, like I would have had to upload my picture for this AI hairstyle, so or the questions and answers that you give ChatGPT, that this data is now being mined to use for future research or future generative responses, right? So, but I think there's power, like you said, in sharing data, like the research, and maybe we can, cure cancer if we can share and mine this data together and research and not hold it to one company's, you know,
yeah,
reservoir, of information. So I think there's pros and cons to sharing data, but if you use it with, wisely, then it can be used for good.
absolutely. I don't think I also have heard, right, that people are afraid, that it eliminates the need for human creativity or whatever. And I love it because I feel like AI is meant to work alongside humans.
Hmm.
Like I love it for the fact that I think when I ask it the right question, it can make me think even bigger, and I don't have problems thinking big anyway, but like it can really take me to some ideas that are really outside my comfort zone. And I love that. Right. And so, but that doesn't eliminate my responsibility to think critically about those ideas or to question those ideas or to even fact check those ideas or, like I'm wise enough, and I think anybody using AI has to be really mindful, right? That you can't just accept what it gives you as being gold, right? It's
Right.
it's not a and honestly, it's the same when you do a Google search, right? You can't just believe everything you read.
Right. Yeah, all those Facebook videos are not always true. But yes, I completely agree with that, is that you have to utilize it together. But it also helps explain things. I tried to buy a laptop earlier this year, and when I'm out on the website, it's like, let us help you buy a laptop. I felt it was the most confusing process. It's showing me four different computers, and I could not tell the difference between the four of them because they seem to have the same processors and same size. And I'm like, I had to go to Chat GPT that could explain it to me in layman's terms what the difference between the two were. And I was just like, oh, this is fantastic, right?
Right? Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So let's talk about some tips to get started. And for people who aren't technical experts who might be reluctant or um just afraid to dip their toe in the water and like you said, you don't have to spend money to start testing out these tools. I mean, honestly, my Windows updated and Copilot, which is another
Yep.
AI tool, is right there all of the time now, going, do you want to use Copilot? Like, I don't know. I'm not in the mood today. And so, so I would love to just talk through some tips about getting started. For me, I started small, right? I just picked something that was low risk and low, you know, um, it just, it was planning, looking at a trip, right? And something that I could fact check on my own to say, well, what kind of information is it going to give me? And so I just started doing small experiments, honestly, to say, okay, if I were going to write something, I want to write a letter, a recommendation letter for someone, and I played with that. I played with planning a trip. I played with, brainstorming. And so I'm just curious what tips you would have for somebody who wants to start.
Yeah, I that's exactly how I started. You just got to start with one question and then figure out a way to ask the same question three different ways, four different ways. And then you can see how ChatGPT will provide you different answers. And so you'll learn how to, just like with people, ask the question in the right way to get a relevant answer or to get a better answer. So that's me.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I always make sure and do is I tell whether it's Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever tool, I always tell it what I want it to be an expert in so that it is not searching the entire internet for an answer. And so I'll tell it, you are an expert in, you know, time management, or you are an expert in using Excel, or you're an expert in travel planning before I then follow on with my question. Because it cuts down all of the things it will read and consider, right? Instead of everything and its brother that it's been taught, right? It'll focus on
Yeah.
things that are from expert authorities or from expert resources. Um, as well. And so that's another thing. And I would say just click on, there's so many tools out there now that, if you're not into Chat GPT, pick something else, right? look at if you're using PowerPoint or, just play with one of those other tools to see what happens, right? Let it generate an image for you and see what happens.
Yes.
Um, awesome. Awesome. Well, I would love to challenge our listeners that maybe they can pick something new and try to experiment this week. I would love for them to comment and to share below their favorite tools. And so, their favorite kind of tools that they're using right now, what they use them for, all of those kinds of things. I would love to hear from everyone who's listening how they're using AI and what that looks like for them.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about it because, as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, we are always looking to learn new tips and tricks. So we'd love to hear what tools you're using and how you're accomplishing that. So, as we get to Salt's Kitchen and wrap up our podcast this week, of course, I had to, see if what AI can do in the kitchen. And so I found an article that would talked about can AI make a cookie um, tastier chocolate chip cookie, that is, than a human. So it was an article by NPR. And so they tested both ChatGPT and a new AI tool I hadn't heard about, surprisingly enough, since I love all things baking, but called DishGen against a very popular chocolate chip cookie recipe produced by America's Test Kitchen. So AI did generate a recipe very close to the test kitchen's recipe, or I'm sorry, the recipe found on the back of the Nestle Toll House chocolate chip bag, which I'm sure we're all familiar with the famous Toll House chocolate chip cookies. But interesting enough that as the tester asked ChatGPT the same question at different times throughout the day, different days, that the recipe would vary each time it asked it for a recipe. So, again, like we said earlier in this podcast, ask different questions. Timing may play a factor, or if you ask it to be an expert baker, might have changed the recipe that it generated as well. But um, the tester thought the AI produced a fairly good recipe, but it did not pick up on a lot of nuances that a lot of people add into their recipe, like toasting the nuts to get, bring out that flavor, browning the butter that goes into the recipe. So, but plus you have the emotional pull of making your mother's, recipe from your childhood or your favorite aunt's recipe. So that way. But anyway, I do recommend that, give DishGen a try. You only get 3 free credits, so otherwise it's roughly $8 a month. But it does great things like if you're trying to figure out what to cook with things that are in your refrigerator, it'll give you great recipes. I used it and tested it out for smoked sausage because I have like 1,000 of them in my freezer right now from hunting season. But it gave me a similar recipe to what I might find on Pinterest. So it'll be interesting to see how these tools develop over the coming months because they are constantly changing.
I love that. I love that. And what a great way to wrap up with Salt's Kitchen today. And so I'll have to give it a try for a recipe and come back and see how it turns out.
There you go. Can't
Yeah,
wait to hear it.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that does it for us for today.
It does.
And I am so excited that we had the chance to talk about artificial intelligence. Do you see the light shifting
I
in my
do.
video today? This is crazy. The light is shifting and it is all over the place. Look
Are you
at
sure you
that.
don't have an AI light bulb in your room there?
It is real sunshine that is shifting its way around my window right now.
There you go.
So, yeah, maybe if I had used some artificial lighting, we wouldn't have had this problem today. So, thank you so much for tuning in to A Dash of Salt. I am Stacy McCracken and my co-host Sharon Maue, and we are Two Salty Women. We can't wait to have you come back. Please remember to comment. Please add us to your podcast playlist and check us out at twosaltywomen.com.
That's right. Life is always better with a dash of salt. Stacy, till next time.
Absolutely. Till next time, take care.